Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for your patience. We're a little bit late, but we're going to get a move on. Just before we start, a few preliminaries. If I could ask the members to, when they're speaking on any item, can you please make sure that you speak as clearly as you can into the microphone, because it is very difficult sometimes for people behind us to hear. Again, if you could please make sure your phones are switched off or on silent, that would be really helpful. If the fire alarm goes off, we're not expecting a drill, so it'll be a real fire alarm, and if we could all exit by the fire exit to my right in the corner there. I also just need to let people know that we will be filming as part of the Council's policy for these meetings. We will be filming the meeting. Now, if any member of the public doesn't wish to be filmed, if they're speaking against or for any item, then if they could let Fabiola here know, and we'll make sure that you're not filmed. Everybody else will be filmed as a matter of course, and it's available on the YouTube, the Council's YouTube channel. Okay, we'll move into the agenda then. Apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, we received apologies from Councillor Brock and Klonowski.
Okay, thank you. Next one's urgent business. I don't have any urgent business, but I wonder if the members would be kind enough to pay respects to Brian Ames, who passed away this week, who's a member of the Planning Committee last year. We could just honour his memory with a minute's silence, if everybody's okay with that. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Next one's declarations of interest. Is there any member got any declaration of interest for anything on the agenda this evening? No. I'm just going to declare. I don't think it's interest or anything, but I just want, for the sake of transparency, the item, the Mossdown Road item. I have been lobbied on this, and I have had some conversations with the developers. I don't think there's anything particularly of any concern there, but I just want it to be made clear that I have had contact with them. Are there anything else from any of the members? No? Okay, thank you. We've got no public questions, so we can skip that one. For members at the last meeting, can I have a mover and a seconder for the minutes? Councillor Hudson moved, and Councillor, who did it second? Oh, right, okay. Steve Hewitt, Councillor Hewitt has seconded it, thank you. Okay, just for those people who may not have been to the committee before, what we do, we have an agenda book, but because we've got a lot of members of the public here, we try not to put them through the agony of the full meeting. So what we're going to do, we're going to take items 7 and 8 first, and then item 6. Those are the items that we've got where we have speakers and some public interest. So we're going to take item number 7 first. Yes, yeah. Pages 20 to 36 in your agenda book, 318 Oldham Road, Brighton. Who's going to introduce this one for us? Richard? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to an end of terrace property currently occupied by an accountancy firm. The building has been extended to the rear with a pitched roof extension and a further 2-storey flat roof addition. Planning permission is sought for the change of use from an office to a 9-bed house of multiple occupation. 9 bedrooms would occupy the ground and first floor of the building and would each have a shower room and ensuite. Access is obtained from the front of the building with an ancillary access gained from the side and rear of the building. A shared living room and kitchen would be in the lower ground floor with 2 new windows in the side elevation facing 314-316 Oldham Road. There is an integral lower ground floor garage towards the rear of the building which faces 314-316 Oldham Road and is accessed from Arlington Close. The garage has an internal access from the kitchen area and is proposed to be used for bin storage and cycle storage. It is therefore considered that the loss of the office space is acceptable given the context of the surrounding area. The proposal would not place an undue burden on the surrounding land uses in respect of their amenity. The proposal proposes an acceptable level of internal space for future occupiers and with respect to the sustainable location would not harm the level of highway safety. It is therefore recommended that planning permission is approved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Richard. We have 2 speakers on this. The first is an objector, and that is Manaz Nazir. Okay, I'm not sure whether you've been briefed on what to do, but if you could just take a seat there. When you're ready, there's a little button on the front of the microphone. If you press that and speak into the mic, a little red light will come on. You've 3 minutes. We'll remind you when there's 30 seconds. It'll be quite abrupt, so don't, it's not being rude, it's just how we do it. After the 30 seconds, if you haven't finished speaking, we'll ask you to stop. But then there's an opportunity for the members of the panel to ask you questions, so they may or not have questions for you. So when you're ready, off you go.
Okay, my name is Manaz Nazir. I'm a resident that lives close to this property. I'm also have over a decade experience of tenancy enforcement with a local authority and private sector housing. I originally put objections in for this property being turned from offices to HMO, purely for the reasons that it would increase the level of rubbish in the area. It would increase the noise, because previously, as it's been an office, come 5 o'clock the business is shut down and residents are not disturbed by this building. Also, having from my employment previous experience with HMO, there has been, I raised concerns about the occupants of who will be renting out these properties and the number of people that will be renting out these properties, which will increase the number of visitors to that property. We're a community that has young children there who are very family orientated, and having single occupants would impact the community that we have there. Also, there's not been any indication of the background of these people who will be going, whether they'll be local authority after school, care leavers, or be older, or what their background will be. There's been nothing, no communication of that nature. So that increases the concerns of the residents in the area. I also have concerns of how this property will be managed and monitored, and how agents will work with residents to address issues. Again, that hasn't been explained to residents either in the area. Like I said, having the experience, they are very, very difficult with the number of people that are in the properties to monitor the behaviour of each individual and the consequences for the residents in that area. As we all aware, in local authority and with police, there's limited resources to address these issues, which would mean that residents in the local area would suffer the consequences
30 seconds
of this occupation. So I strongly object to it being such a property where there are that many 18 individuals that is coming into a family oriented area anyway. Okay?
Okay, just stay there for a moment, please.
Sorry.
Could you, don't be sorry, don't be sorry. Are there any questions? No? Okay.
Yes, that's what.
Yes, certainly.
Yes.
You make reference to basically a background check on those who may live there. What sort of background check is made when somebody moves into, shall we say, a normal house?
Well, when someone moves into a normal house, depending on the occupancy, whether it's going to be a rented property or an owner-occupier, it's there to sustain a tenancy. Whereas in my experience, HMO have been quick, short tenancies as a stopover for people who are coming out of care, coming out of any kind of residential place, or more seriously out of prison. So that's the concern that we have, that if it was just a 4 flats, it would be sustainable because somebody wants to buy and live there and be part of the community that we already have there.
Okay, any more questions? No? Thank you very much for that. If you could just knock the mic off as you leave, thank you. Could I ask the applicant's agent, Grant Erskine? Okay, again the same situation for yourself, Grant. When you're ready, if you just press the button.
Yes, thank you. So my name is Grant Erskine. I am the applicant's agent. The applicant sends his apologies. He wanted to attend himself, but he's unfortunately ill. To address some of the points, firstly a little bit of background on my client. He owns a series of HMOs across Oldham. He's born and bred Oldham himself, and they all follow the same business model. They're all high-end, they're all en-suite based, they're all oversized rooms, very much targeting a very specific part of the market, i.e. better tenants. This one quite obviously is aiming at nurses and junior doctors in the hospital down the road because of its proximity, but with a secondary consideration to the town centre. I think that I'm really here just to address any questions or any concerns anybody has. We've worked very, very closely with Oldham Planning Department to achieve a scheme that they're happy to approve, and yeah, if that's all, thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions? Could I just ask a question? That you said oversized rooms. Some of these rooms are incredibly small.
Okay, yes, so national guidelines for room sizes are for a single occupant, which even though we've shown double beds on each room to give a proportion of size, they're actually single occupant. We're only applying for 9 occupants. The national guideline for a single occupant is 6.5 square metres. I believe our smallest room is 10.2 square metres, which is achieving the minimum, it's not even the minimum guidance, the good practice guidance of 10 square metres per room, plus the ensuite. The ensuite is not measured as part of the user's own space.
Okay. How would you propose to manage waste collections? This has been a big issue here. There's a residence parking scheme there, and one of the main reasons that was brought in, amongst others, is that access was blocked frequently. Bin wagons couldn't get out. Now, you were saying that you'll use the garage. You've 9 occupants in there who may not be there. Somebody's going to have to organise that.
So it's part of the management plan that when it comes to occupancy, we will work with the local council bin collection to decide with them which is the best way to approach it. From previous experience, it's actually generally better to put larger commercial grade bins in rather than the residential grade bins, which will be collected from curbside. We cannot ask tenants to pull these out themselves, so they will actually be collected either by the council or by a private property. But it's part of the management and the licensing and everything else that this is a managed process. It's actually better than if they're private residents owning the house.
Okay, I have no more questions. Anybody else? Graham?
Hear what you say in terms of the occupancy, but do you accept that this building could actually accommodate 18 people?
Yes, but it's actually a very key part of any HMO landlord's licensing and their finance. When they apply for the finance on it, it's limited to 9. When they apply for the license, it's limited to 9. The agents will lose their license if they allow any more than 9. And actually, just from a very simple business model, the client doesn't want any more than what he's approved for in it, because it's harder wear and tear. It's hard. It creates friction between different tenants, etc. So they're actually quite strict even on having partners stay over for a couple of nights. You know, of course, any tenant can have a guest for a night or two, but it is letting agents are very, very strict on. It's a 1-person occupancy room. It puts us in breach of planning. It puts us in breach of licensing. It puts us in breach of even our insurance. So yeah, clients, letting agents, everybody is very, very strict on 1 person per room.
You also make the comment that your client has a number of HMOs. Could you tell us how many they have and whereabouts they are?
Okay, I can only tell you the ones that I have done with them. I've been working with them for 2 years. We have one on Huddersfield Road. I believe it's 418 Huddersfield Road. If you just pass the Tesco going up the hill, there's one on the right there. That's a 6-bed one. We have one on Oldham Road in Fieldsworth. Again, a 6-bed one, again, luxury high-end. And then to the rear of that, on Wrigley Head Road, where the road swings up to the left, there's another one on there. And they're the 4 that I've done with them. I believe he has a few others, but unfortunately I can't say where.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll open it up for debate. Councillor Hudson.
Chairman, I'd like to move the recommendation.
Okay, well, I've got a few problems with this, which I'd just like to run. I think, Chris, would you like to... yeah.
It's just for the planning officers, really. Obviously, as the agent says, the business model is for nurses and junior doctors and which are high-end tenants. Obviously, the residents have got a concern in relation to the tenants. Can a planning condition be applied where the occupancy can be only by
professionals?
Medical professionals?
Probably not. Yeah.
Through you, Chair. I think the point you've already heard. Sorry. Yeah, through you, Chair. The point I think you've already heard is that it's very difficult to control the actual occupants of these properties. We're not in a position where we could vet those people in terms of their occupations or any other personal circumstances that they may have. So if members were to look favourably or adversely on this application, it has to be on the basis that that is an unknown. By the same token, the presumptions that might be being made that the people who would occupy these types of premises would be, should we say, not of a high end, not of high quality, again, is not something that we can have any control over. If those persons act in a particular way, then there are laws, there are other regulations that can control those aspects of it. So I think the simple answer is no, it's not the personal circumstances of those people within the planning regime. It's not possible to control that.
Okay, thanks. Could I just say that the character of one of the planning reasons to object to an HMO is the effect on the character of the neighbourhood, and I think the speaker brought that out. The nature of the area are semi-detached houses with families and gardens. This is completely different. And I've heard about the industrial bin as well, which adds another dimension to that. Everybody else has got the normal bins, so that we've got an industrial bin issue, which I need to be convinced how that would be managed, because my experience of that is it's extremely difficult to do that. I've also got an issue with the guidelines, the technical standards for the space. I think if you look at the on the application, in the applications, yes, 7.5. But I've got a table here that says, and this refers to a 6-bedroomed property. This is obviously 9 bedrooms and a 3-storey dwelling, and it gives a minimum square meterage. Which is less than what is on the applicant's application form.
Yeah, I think sometimes there is a bit of confusion about the residential standards, because we are dealing with a house in multiple occupation here, as opposed to the standards which are really looking at self-contained units primarily. So there is a difference between what is accepted there. This isn't, when it talks about a 6-bedroom property, it doesn't have in mind a 6-person house in multiple occupation. So there are different standards that would apply. Those can give a guide, but they are not a definitive reason why an application on this basis could be refused.
Okay, well, I need to be convinced of that. The other thing is there's a reference to the closeness of the rear windows to in the front of 4 Arlington Close, 2 Arlington Close, and the report actually says it's below the normal privacy standards.
Yeah, again, Chair, that is the fact as it exists. Those windows, of course, are already there, and they were used in connection with the existing authorised use of the property. So there's already an established degree of overlooking between those two elements. Yes, these will become bedrooms for accommodation, but again, the potential for overlooking is not increased. It is an existing situation. Whether that was a particular problem, we could look at glazing solutions to those windows, then that's something we could consider if that was an important issue that members wanted to be clear on.
Well, I would consider it is an important issue, considering it is if it's a dwelling, it could be, you have people there in the evenings, not just through the day. I do think the level of activity from introducing a minimum of 9 unrelated and unconnected people into an area of this nature will have a detrimental effect on the neighbourhood, and I've got a few concerns about the whole thing. I've concerns how the bins will be managed. I've concerns about this window. I've concerns about the size of the actual proposed bed sits, and I just feel we need to answer those first. We haven't got the information here. I wonder if we could perhaps you could take this away, look at it, and come back to us if the members would be happy to defer it.
Yeah. My concern with this is that we've got plans drawn up that shows a double bed in every room. We've heard the agent say that that's only been done, it's just been put in. It's really single occupancy. Then he says, but people could stay over. So we could be talking of minimum of 9. We could be talking.
Oh, I've used the minimum of 9.
Minimum of 9. Yeah. We could be talking of maximum of 18. Again, it comes down to conditions. If it is intended for single bedrooms, can we put a condition on it that the maximum number of occupants of the building overnight is 9? Because that is what is intended, that's what we're being asked to consider as a planning committee.
I think it's an issue that's already been raised, and it's something that is covered through the licensing regime rather than the planning regime. From a planning point of view, we imposed a condition that said, for instance, 9 people shall reside there at any one time. There is a difficulty in enforcing that and collecting the evidence to justify that. That's why, where there is another regime in place, regulations are quite clear that you should not duplicate those controls. So I can understand that is a concern, but there is another regime in place to deal with that issue, and therefore it wouldn't be appropriate as a planning control on the particular occupancy levels. Can I just raise another issue, Chair, because it was a point you made about the character of the residential accommodation in the area. This is a property that fronts onto Oldham Road, and there are commercial properties nearby. There are different types of property and possibly other types of accommodation, first floor flats occupied above commercial units and so forth. So whilst Arlington, close at the back, is a kind of family housing area, that isn't necessarily definitive of the whole character of the street scene, and I think there is a policy both locally and nationally to get a mix of residential accommodation within those areas.
Okay, I think my interpretation was closer than yours. Okay, I've got a few people to speak. John, I think you were first. Then, sorry, John McCann was first. John Hudson, and then Pete. Paul. Sorry. Thank you. I don't know. John.
Thanks, Chair. I notice in the objections that they were saying there is only one entry point, so perhaps the officers could comment upon that if you could have 18 people in a building. And the other one is that there is a parking permit scheme in that area which the objector says is at capacity. There's a question about what capacity means, but actually I'd be grateful for a comment on that, because if you put a number of new people into an area, some of them will have cars or transport. And the other one, to pick up on your point, Chair, I was really concerned about the overlooking, because it's different having a bedroom overlooking which you occupy at night as compared to an office that you tend to occupy 9 till 5. Okay. So I have that one very much in mind as an entirely different way of overlooking on those two times. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, John. Councillor Hudson, John.
Thank you, Chairman. What worries me is the double standards that we sometimes have, because the council have a building with smaller flats than this that we passed, down past the Coliseum. And we've redone it, and we've suggested that it would be great for nurses and doctors and people at the hospital, and nobody raised any objection about the size and they're smaller than this. So what I worry about, and I always worry about it, if this goes to appeal, and we haven't been that successful on our appeals looking at tonight's agenda, so will we spend ratepayers' money wisely if we can't maintain a standard throughout? So if we're saying that it's all right for Oldham Council but it's wrong for this applicant, I don't understand that. So that is the worry I have, Chairman, that we're not applying the same rules. We seem to be thinking, as we approach the election, and we're very political, we seem to be getting very parochial in our attempts to please everybody, and planning doesn't please anybody. We've learned that over the years. But I moved this because I felt the officers had made every attempt to present this and make use of this building to the best. And you know, we can never say that somebody's bad until they do something bad. So I don't know who's coming to live next to me, and I don't know who they're having in the bed at night, and neither do I want to know. So I don't think it's our job to be asking who these people are going to have. If they're lucky enough to get somebody to stay over, I say good luck to them, Chairman.
Thank you, John. Okay. Paul?
Thank you, Chair. I think that we've heard quite a lot tonight about people second-guessing the nature of the clients of this HMO. And if we're second-guessing that they're going to be junior doctors and nurses, clearly I would imagine that they would possibly be car owners. We've already got an issue with parking there. Can we realistically say we could allow another 9 cars in that close without causing any detriment to the people? Thank you.
Okay, well, I have insight on that, being the person that actually introduced this residence parking scheme to this area. And initially, this particular property wasn't going to be given permits because it was an office. But we felt it was only reasonable to do so because the office had been established for some time, and I think there was 4 permits issued to that property. This is a different thing. The car park does get full in the evening. You have to drive past it. I'm acutely aware that that is not necessarily a planning issue, and it may, because again we're assuming type of people, and I fully accept, John, Councillor Hudson, that we cannot judge the people, and I haven't made any comments on that at all this evening. But whoever takes in, if we are to allow a property of this to be built, we have to make sure that it's fit to live in. And the questions that I've asked, I think, are very reasonable. I've just one more to ask, and then we'll take a decision of whether we're going to approve, refuse, or defer it for the answers to be questioned. Are there any other comments? No. I was just going to say that you've got a kitchen area, a shared kitchen area, that for a minimum of 9 people, which is in the basement area, and it doesn't have any sort of extract facilities there. I know you've said that suitable extract should be fitted, but that's a concern as well, because 9 people, you're probably going to have them using one kitchen. It's going to probably be in heavy use, that kitchen. So there's a real problem. It's not like a domestic kitchen of the tourist properties next door or the ones in Arlington Close. It could be in almost constant use. So adequate facilities to take the orders out are very important, and I'd like to see how that could be achieved.
From a planning perspective, the provision of extraction equipment from cooking is obviously a condition that we can impose, and then that would be assessed by our colleagues on the technical basis of that equipment through the environmental health regime. So it is an element of something that could be controlled. I think that your comment, Chair, about the 9 residents and obviously all using the kitchen, it's somewhat akin to when people think everybody's going to drive their car in the morning at the same time. Those 9 people are unlikely to be all wanting to use that kitchen at the same time. And to some extent, there are some large family houses in the local area, so that there are potential issues in terms of cooking odours and so on that could occur in any event at local properties. So I'm not so sure this isn't a commercial kitchen. I suspect that the issue would not be that severe in relation to the number of residents at this property.
Okay. There's 2 proposals. Well, there's 3 ways to take this now, unless anybody's got anything else they want to put in. It's been proposed, first of all, by Councillor Hudson that we accept the report as per the officer's recommendations. I have requested that we defer it to get the answers regarding the glazing, more detail on the management and the extraction of fumes, etc., and how the parking permits are likely to be distributed. So, first of all, I always get a little bit lost when we have multiple proposals. So,
Take the first one.
which was John's? Yeah. Yeah. So, do I have a seconder for Councillor Hudson's proposal?
I'll second.
You'll second to accept the... Okay, so all those in favour of the officer's recommendations? Against?
So the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay. So that's 6 to 5. It's not been approved. So the application's actually been refused. Sorry, we've not made the second one yet. Sorry, I should have taken my hand in before I came this evening. Okay, so now we'll move to to my suggestion that we defer it for the information to be collected, and then we can make a more reasoned judgment on the actual application. So those in favour of deferment?
Second.
Yeah, it's been seconded by Paul. Yeah. All those in favour of deferment?
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Okay, so and against deferment, and we have 1. So it actually, we'll defer it, and if you could get that information for us, and we'll deal with it at a later date.
Chair, can I just confirm that you want details around refuse and bins, fumes, parking,
And the glazing.
and the overlooking glazing issue? All right, we'll do that then, future.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next one. If anybody who came to see that wishes to leave, I'll just wait 2 seconds while you leave. We're going to deal with item number 8 now, which is on pages 37 to 42. We have 1 speaker. Yeah.
If you have any other places, there's 12 rules here. And that against was 6-5.
Yeah.
So we need to ask for translations.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just not with it tonight. Well, not as much as I usually am. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, item 8. We have 1 speaker, an objector, and forgive me, I should have also brought my glasses tonight. That's Nazim Ashraf. Nazim? Ah, there he is, sir. I'll just remind you, when you sit down, we'll invite you to speak after the officers introduce the item, and we'll give you 3 minutes, remind you when you've 30 seconds, sir. We need some new batteries for the mags. Okay, the officer will just introduce it, and then you can address the committee, sir. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. This is application PA 341105/17 for a change of use from a residential dwelling, use class C3, to a residential institution, use class C2 at 17 Clarksfield Street, Oldham. It is proposed to change the use of the building from a residential dwelling to a residential institution. The proposed use would involve the building being utilised for the care of 4 children in what was a 5-bedroom dwelling. The building will be staffed 24 hours a day, including staff who will work during the night, with additional staff sleeping within the home. The applicant proposes to employ 8 full-time members of staff who will work on a rota-based shift pattern. There will be 4 different shifts per 24 hours. Each day shift will have 2 members of staff, and each night shift will have 1 member of staff. This again is a satellite image showing the location of the dwelling, and images of the dwelling itself. And there's no proposed changes to the dwelling externally or internally. And it's officer's recommendation that the use of the site as a residential institution would be an acceptable use in this residential area. The siting of the proposed development not placed undue burden on surrounding land uses, and take into account the sustainable location. There are no concerns in respect of highway safety, and that planning permission is approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so when you're ready, just press the button and off you go.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to raise a few concerns from the residents first of all, and then I'll go on to our own concerns. Residents' concerns are that it's going to damage the area. It's a very nice area, it's a quiet area with diverse community, a shining light in the borough. We need to try and avoid landlords coming in. We've been trying to avoid landlords coming in and destroy it completely. We need to be attracting families in all backgrounds and not vulnerable youth. We already have residents who are vulnerable, elderly, disabled. Some of them have carers. This proposal has made residents who have lived here for over 30 years fear for their safety. This aspect of Policy 9, community safety, I don't think has been considered, nor have the reports submitted by the residents, the report on crime and antisocial behaviour findings from 2003, Crime and Justice Survey, and the report Keeping Children in Care, Out of Trouble, an independent review chaired by Lord Laming. Residents have highlighted the areas of concern that boys or youth who have had unstable areas of unstable backgrounds, many placement breakdowns, attachment issues, complex needs, especially emotional and mental health problems, and risk that they pose on this quiet neighbourhood of antisocial behaviour. They could have been subjected to physical or sexual abuse themselves and can think it is normal to go on and abuse. As well as other issues of attachment, potential abusers who show them love and attention. This was highlighted in the House of Lords debate on the 25th of October 2012. The report is attached. It was attached to our objection, and I have it here if anybody wants to see that. Traffic potentially will be very heavy with staff crossover, 4 people at a time, plus visitors and statutory services visiting the house, parking pavements, and pedestrians having to walk in the road as there's no pavement on the side. Mums with children have had near misses so many times, especially from residents coming up Yorkdale due to cars parked on the right and ahead in the actual proposed property itself. I have some pictures here. We feel our concerns have not been addressed at all by the planning officer. We share a veranda and a beautiful views with a hip-high fence that divides the two properties. This is a major concern as it can be accessed by the looked after children.
30 seconds.
At all times, a major invasion of our safety and privacy for us and our children. We have spoken to other care homes with that neighbouring gardens are often dumping grounds for looked after children burning cigarettes when they do not wish to be caught. This is a risk to our children who could be playing in the gardens. So if planning is to be granted, we'd like to know what precautions are being taken to safeguard us.
Okay, thank you. Right, any questions? No? Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thank you for that. I'll open it up for debate then. I've had an experience of a similar home, and the residents were concerned when it first opened, and there were a few incidents, but by and large it's settled down. It hasn't really been a problem. It's the fear of the unknown, I think, in these cases as much as anything else, but 4 people is not excessive, I would have thought. John?
Just clarification, Chair, really. On page 1 it says there's space for 3 cars on the plot, and then on page 39, access and parking, it says there'll be at least 2 on-site parking spaces. Is it 2 or 3? Because I will think if there's 3, there's not really a problem with parking. If there's 2, it may be tight at times.
Yeah, through you, Chair. The photographs are still up at the moment, and you can see the parking area that is available. You could get, in front of the garage, you could get 3 cars onto the site. Obviously, it depends on the size of those vehicles. It would clearly accommodate 2 vehicles. 3, though, could reasonably fit on the site. And obviously, there is a garage structure there as well, if that was needed.
Okay, any more questions? No? Okay, well, you've heard the objector, seen the officer's report. It is recommended for approval. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that?
Move, Chair.
You have a seconder?
Second.
It's moved and second for approval. All those in favour? And abstentions? Okay, okay. Well, the application then is approved. We'll now move on to item number 6. Are you going to introduce this one, Steve? Graham's going to introduce this one. Sorry? Just pause for a moment, see if anybody wants to leave. Okay, we've got one speaker on this, Mr. Charlton, who's familiar with the system. You can stay there for the minute if you want, Alan, or you can come up now. Graham's going to introduce the item, and then I'll ask Mr. Charlton to speak. Graham.
Thank you, Chair. This is the application that was deferred last month, 339409 in 2016. Outline application for use of site for industry, offices, warehouses, use classes B1, B2 and B8 in a waste energy plant. Access to be considered in all the matters reserved with land at Mossdown Road in Brighton. The application site is comprised of some 6.41 hectares of land in Brighton. It's bounded on the west and south by industrial and warehouse development, and on the east by the Metrolink tram line, beyond which is open countryside. A large amount of fill material has since been deposited on the western part of the site. It is generally in an unkept state since it has been used for illegal dumping in the past. In the northeastern part of the site there is a semi-derelict industrial building. Access to the site is via Mossdown Road to the west and Meek Street to the north. The proposal is intended to retain and remodel the illegally deposited material on the site to make it suitable for development, provide a development consisting of industry, office and warehouses, provide a waste energy plant capable of producing a maximum of 10 or 11 megawatts of electricity as well as heat for the surrounding businesses. Landscape the site in a comprehensive way, address the ecology issues. This will involve remedial measures to the disturbed areas and the enhancement of the natural habitat in and around the site. The site photographs are shown here show the existing site entrance, existing access route to existing access on Mossdown Road, the proposed site entrance from Mossdown Road. This is the proposed secondary site entrance from Meek Street, the junction with Moss Lane and Higginshaw Lane, the Meek Street Higginshaw Lane junction, an indicative site plan. The indicative site plan shows the waste energy plant being sited in the middle of the site with 2 larger units sited to the north and south of it. However, due to the outlying nature, with all matters reserved except for access, there is no guarantee that the site will be laid out as shown. Turning to the reasons for refusal. Reason number 1 is the proposed development, by virtue of its proposed size, scale and massing, would have a high adverse impact on the character of the Beal Valley OPOL designation, which could not be adequately mitigated enough to lessen the impact. OPOL is open land which will not serve the purposes of the Green Belt. It is locally important because it helps preserve the distinctiveness of an area, as well as providing attractive settings. They provide other benefits such as informal recreation and habitats for biodiversity, helping to provide sustainable communities and helping mitigate climate change. Reason for refusal number 2 is the FRA submitted with the application does not comply with the requirements set out in paragraph 30 of the Planning Practice Guide to National Planning Policy Framework. The submitted FRA does not therefore provide a suitable basis for assessment to be made of the flood risks arising from the proposed development. In particular, the submitted FRA fails to cover the following point in sufficient detail: the potential impact on flood risk elsewhere due to increasing ground levels within the development and potential loss of flood storage. Number 3 is the applicant has failed to demonstrate that the proposed development would not have a severe impact on the efficient operation of the local or strategic highway network. This will lead to congestion and delays on the strategic and local highway networks. Number 4 is the applicant has failed to demonstrate that the 2 accesses into the site from Mossdown Lane and Moss Lane respectively will operate safely for the type of intensification of use intended. The local highway authority do not consider that the accesses can be used safely without the risk of an increase in accidents to the detriment of highway safety. Number 5 is access to the site along Mossdown Road and Moss Lane by virtue of the existing highway geometry, will not accommodate the type and volume of traffic that will be generated by the proposed development. This will lead to a conflict between all users of the highway to the detriment of highway safety. And finally, reason for refusal number 6, and it's a big one, the application and the submitted EIA has failed to demonstrate that the application will not have a detrimental impact on the surrounding area's air quality, noise and odours from the processes proposed to be undertaken on the site. Principally, the application fails to demonstrate that the emissions from the processes and road traffic combined will not have a significantly adverse impact on the air quality of the surrounding area. Additionally, the applicant has failed to demonstrate that the transport and storage of refuse-derived fuels on the site will not have a significant adverse impact on the surrounding area. Finally, the proposal has failed to demonstrate that the potential noise from the proposed industrial units and vehicle movements to and from the site would not have a detrimental impact upon the amenity of nearby residential properties. Now, despite the deferral of the application from the previous committee, none of the statutory consultees have withdrawn their objection to the proposal in its current form. The statutory consultees are listed there: the Environment Agency, Oldham Council's Environmental Health Department, Transport for Greater Manchester and the Council's Highways Department. The Council received a letter from the 15th of March from the applicant's solicitors requesting that application before you for determination be deferred again for matters of process and for procedural fairness. However, fundamental issues with the scheme remain outstanding. In officers' view, they are not close to being acceptable, and there appears no likelihood of objections in principle and of statutory nature being resolved. In these circumstances, we have taken the view that a decision is necessary to move this matter forward. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cholton.
Thank you, Chair. The development, as you've seen from the slides, is on an unsightly tip site next to existing haulage and waste businesses. The site is a visual and environmental mess. The waste-to-energy plant will bring in an investment of around £90 million to Oldham. It will include state-of-the-art technology, high-quality architecture, and will enable the proper remedial treatment of this 16-acre site that has been a thorn in the side of Oldham Council and the Environment Agency for years. A figure of some £6 million for the remedial work has been put forward. The process is a clean process with pre-treated waste being delivered in sealed lorries at a balanced rate to generate an even flow of waste coming into the plant. The lorries will drive into the building and be unloaded. There will be no outside storage. The operation of the plant, including air quality and noise control, will be subject to strict regulations by the Environment Agency and other agencies. These clean and high-tech plants are the way forward for the treatment of waste and the production of heat for local businesses and electricity for the grid. There are some 27 waste-to-energy plants already operating in the UK, including those at Leeds, Sheffield and Runcorn nearby. We need more of the plants to keep up with the demand. We have operators who are keen to acquire the site once a decision in principle is given. They will provide the details of the design and the operation of the plant. We do not want to lose this investment to another borough. The application is in outline with only access to be decided at this stage. This evening we are looking only at the principle of development. The current LDF designation of the land as other protected open land is no longer appropriate due to its unsightly appearance, as you've seen from the slides. Chair, the protected land designation is the main issue for committee consideration. We feel that the outstanding technical issues referred to in the report can be addressed before the application is referred to the Government Office as a departure from the development plan. Our consultants have already supplied additional information and will work with you with a view to agreeing a way forward. Chair,
30 seconds.
We have an opportunity to clean up this problem site, reduce the waste miles travelled, generate electricity and provide cheap heat for the surrounding businesses in a high quality building. Chair, the development is good for the site and in our view good for Oldham. I hope that you can support a mindful to approve decision with referral to the Government Office as a departure from the development plan once the technical issues are agreed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chilton. Spot on. It's been practising. Okay, are there any questions? Mr. Charlton, you mentioned there are developers waiting in the wings here. Can you enlighten us, give us a little more information on that? Who they are, how many there are?
Yes, we've had 3 approaches that we've already had preliminary discussions with. One is from a Canadian pension fund that is looking to invest in the site. There is another approach through Siemens, which I understand is backed by Chinese money, and we have another approach from a Norwegian fund that's looking to invest in the UK. And we have other interests as well, but those are the 3 that are current.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions from the panel? No. Okay, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, we'll open it for debate. There's no question that this is the way forward for waste, in my view. I think the landfill is, we know that we can't landfill, and I think some of the recycling methods for paper, plastics are questionable. And this is currently a horrible site indeed. The problem is there's so many material planning reasons against this that it's just not possible to support it at this point, in my opinion. But what do the rest of the panel think?
I've rarely seen so many consultancy agencies, environmental, transport, well, nearly every one of them, flooding, all saying no to this plan as it is. And I think they have to either improve it, or indeed, I don't know whether extension is the answer, because the bigger the site, the more you can do on it. It might solve some of the transport problems if you had more to play with. But I'm certainly aware that the comment about the lorries not having a safe track for in and out really does weigh with me. You only need one accident with one of these heavy lorries and you have a death, I think. So I would go for refusal, Chair.
Yeah. Okay. Any more comments? No? Well, hopefully with what seems to be some very serious developers and financiers in the background, this might come back, but at this point in time, it is recommended for refusal. So can I take a vote on that? Yeah? You'll second it? Yeah?
Just on the wait list, they're asking for deferral for matters of process and procedural fairness. I'm just wondering if we do vote on it now, are we going to, is there going to be a breach of process or procedural fairness that can come back and bite us?
Yeah, obviously we took the solicitor's letter seriously, and that's obviously why the late list covers obviously the points. But as you can see in your late list, whilst that is claimed, there are no specifics in the letter actually outlining that. And indeed, Graham, when he wrote the late list report, makes it very clear why he doesn't think that's the case. I mean, I think the polite way to put it is this application's been in since November 2016. This committee kindly deferred the matter to try and deal with some of the issues that were raised. You will see from the report that all the statutory authorities came back saying exactly the same thing, that they didn't have enough information to change their particular position. There comes a time, I'm afraid, where we're all aware that the act of making a planning application is the act of asking a local authority to make a decision. I think the members have been perfectly reasonable by giving the applicant a chance to fix this. We've gone back to the statutory consultees, which is the list which Graham brought up. They all said exactly the same thing as Councillor McCann has very clearly put. On that basis, we don't think there's any issues about that. We think it's about time we made a decision, hence the reason we put the matter forward to offers to members somewhat reluctantly. There are still too many things we're wrong with it, and that's why we consider that the sixth reason for refusal will stand.
Okay, so we'll make a decision. All those in favour of the officer's recommendations? Against? And there's no abstentions then, I guess? No? Okay, so the application is refused.
We've got one
more items. We've got another speaker. Item 11, pages 55 to 64. We've got the applicant's agent, Mr. Jones. Ah, there you are. Thought I recognised you. A bit of deja vu then. Thought normally you'd be on this side of the table, wouldn't you? Okay. This is Grandpa Greens in Diggle. Who's going to introduce this one? It's you, Hannah. Okay, Hannah, and then we'll ask Mr. Jones to speak.
Mike, give me a second on the technology. Okay, so some of the members will recognise this application. It's very similar to an application that was determined about this time last year, which was refused. This is an application for the change of use of the land behind Grandpa Greens to form a 24-space car park and the erection of a disabled access ramp for use by members of the public and customers of Grandpa Greens. So here you can see the site location plan. The red edge that extends nearest the lock, that's where the disabled access ramp is, and coming in off Ward Lane would be the access to the car park. Here are some site photographs showing Grandpa Greens across the lock. There's a photograph of the access. Here you can see that the car park would, well, the land as existing would be clearly visible from the canal side, and that the few vehicles that are used by staff at Grandpa Greens at the moment churn up the existing site. A few vehicles that's there at the moment. There's the existing site plan and then proposed. This application has changed since you last saw it, in that they've included a landscaping buffer which can be seen to the canal side to the left hand side of your screen, and now the material for the surface, there is no material proposed for the surfacing of the car parking. It'll be just left as it is, so a mixture of mud and grass. So here is a section and showing the ramp access. The main issues for consideration are the principal, the impact on the green belt, residential amenity, highway safety and design. In this instance, the recommendations for refusal because of the impact on the visual openness of the green belt. This, as you've seen from the previous photographs, you will be able to see the car park and its surfacing, although I know that we've got some landscaping in there at the moment, almost compounding that issue. No matter what surface you choose, the hard urban aspect of seeing a load of cars parked here, I think would have a visual impact on the green belt. We've also got a refusal reason for design and a highways reason for refusal, in that the use of the car park with a grass surface will lead to the surface being churned up, as you can see here, and mud being deposited onto the public highway. This will lead to additional manoeuvres in the entrance of the car park as drivers discover that the car park is unusable, and will also result in mud being deposited on the public highway. This will lead to an increase of risk of accidents and congestion along Ward Lane, to the detriment of the safety of all other users of the highway. Thank you. Sorry, Mark, just one more thing on the late list. Sorry, just one more thing on the late list. I have put in an amendment. The double lines on Ward Lane and also has been changed since this application was last viewed by Planning Committee. After speaking to Highways, I understand this is a temporary measure to see how it would affect traffic going on and parking on Ward Lane, and they're currently there for a temporary period of 6 months, starting this January just gone.
Thank you, Chairman and Councillors. As many of you know, Grandpa Greens is a well-established and much-loved tourist destination within Diggle. It started off by selling ice creams from a small garden shed and now has become a successful coffee shop within larger premises directly adjacent to the Huddersfield Canal. The surrounding area of Diggle attracts many people from within and outside the area who enjoy recreational activities within the Sadworth area. People enjoy walking along the canal, visiting the children's play area and duck pond, as well as enjoying an ice cream or hot drink from Grandpa Green's or the nearby Woolly Nicks. On a busy, sunny day, Ward Lane is incredibly busy with parked cars on both sides. Some, but not all of that traffic is from the customers of Grandpa Green's. The council has recently double yellow line parts of the highway to restrict parking, and as such parking in the area would now be at a premium. To the rear of Grandpa Green's is a large garden used to park the owner's own vehicles. Permission is sought to use this garden for the informal parking of up to 24 cars, for anybody who wants to enjoy the area. If permission is granted, people will be able to use the car park free of charge for up to 3 hours. They don't need to be customers of Grandpa Green's to park, they just need to be people visiting the area. The access ramp will allow people with mobility issues to access the canal towpath and Grandpa Green's, which they cannot do at present. A similar planning application was considered by Planning Committee a year ago, and this application seeks to address the concerns that were raised at that time. One concern relates to the parking of vehicles on the access track leading to the car park, as this was considered to cause access problems for emergency vehicles. Signs will be erected along the access road saying that vehicles cannot be parked, and this will be enforced by Grandpa Green's. The access track will also be repaired and maintained by the applicant. The existing garden is mainly grass, with road planings down the centre and at the entrance. Access to the car park is at the end of an existing 100-metre hard surface access track. It is acknowledged that a grass car park will be more usable during the summer months when the weather is drier. During wet weather, there will be times when the car park will be closed, and appropriate advance warning signage will be put up to let customers know. There are no plans to resurface the car park due to cost implications and the fact that grass is a more sympathetic surface material in the green belt. It has been suggested by the parish council that some form of gridlock mesh surface should be used. This is
30 seconds.
This is really expensive for the business to sustain, but my client is more than willing to consider it and to surface the car park in road planing if that is considered acceptable. Concern was also raised about the visual impact of the access ramp when viewed from the towpath. As part of the proposal, native standard sized trees will be planted along the edge of the ramp to screen it from views along the towpath. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. If you just turn your mic
Oh,
off.
yeah.
Are there any questions? Nikki.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Jones, you mentioned 3 hours free parking for anybody, not just Grandpa Green's customers. Would that be policed by Grandpa Green's?
Yes, it would be. We would actually put signs up to kind of make people know. It'll be an informal arrangement, but it will be kind of monitored by the owners of Grandpa Green's. You know, there will be no tickets issued. There'll be no kind of like, you know, permits on the window or anything like that. It'll just be a matter of observing what goes on. If someone was there for a little bit longer than 3 hours and the customer Grandpa Green's are walking in the area, you know, it'll be a quiet word with them. It will not be a fine system. It will just be an informal system.
Thank you. Also, parking at night, would there be a barrier across at all?
At the moment, there is a lockable gate at one end, so that's what we'll be planning. Yeah. So when the business isn't working, isn't operating, it'll be closed.
Okay, thanks. Any more questions? Oh, Graham. Yeah.
Yeah, looking at that picture, how can you honestly consider inviting people to park cars in the area?
I do accept that picture seems to have been taken on the worst day in the winter. I was only there a couple of days ago and I didn't see it like that. You know, I've said in my statements, if it is incredibly wet, then it wouldn't be open. Would that put advanced signage up and say that it's not open for that particular day or that particular week? You know, we do in Sadworth, as we all know, it is wet. It is, you know, it isn't. You know, it won't be used all the time, but it will be used during the drier months.
We could do with knowing what months, because I don't think we get very many dry months now. You've also made reference to the fact that people can park there for 3 hours free of charge. Again, it comes down to what Councillor Kirkman's question: how is it going to be managed? What if somebody doesn't come back after 3 hours? What are you going to do about the cars?
I'd like to think that customers and tourists coming to the area wouldn't outstay the welcome. It's an informal arrangement. If it does become necessary to actually enforce it further, then we can do. Locking the gates at night certainly is a deterrent. A quiet word with the person who's parking the car there. We're not in a situation whereby we want to kind of put wheel clamps or fines. It's going to be an informal arrangement. I can't imagine that being abused.
Could you explain to me why your client actually wants to introduce a free-for-all and tell people that they can park there, whether they come in the shop or not, and they can park for 3 hours? Why are they doing it? What's the purpose?
Diggle, the area of Diggle isn't just about Grandpa Greens. You go to that area for the duck ponds, you go to that area to walk up and down the canal, you go to that area so that you walk from Diggle to Upper Mill and back, you go to the Stanage Tunnel, you go for like wider walks, and there is a hope there by the applicant that, you know, if you're providing a free car park, they will pop in for a coffee or use the community toilets that he provides. There would be other attractions there. So the hope is that people would go to Grandpa Greens, and that's the reason why he does it.
Okay, so no more questions. We'll open the debate. It's recommended for approval. Nikki, and then John.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, sorry, refusal. I do apologise.
Thank you, Chair. Hannah, you mentioned 6 months, the double yellow lines on Ward Lane. In the report it says 18 months. Can you clarify which one it is, please?
The line... Yes, I've made a mistake in the report. It is 6 months. We've clarified with the Highways Department the exact nature of when these lines were implemented and how long they'll be in there. So currently it's a temporary period of 6 months.
Also, you've put these double yellow lines down. I know the area very well. Ravenstone's Drive, I've had many reports that it's pushing the traffic up. These people are coming up with a solution, in my opinion. They're giving you a car park to take the traffic off the highway. You mentioned also, Wendy, in the report that you don't want mud on the highway. Is there anything they could do if we propose that they put a different surface down?
My opinion on this one is very different from the planning officer's opinion. So I welcome the provision of a car park in this area, just not one with that surfacing. So if it was some type of bound gravel or grasscrete or something like that where mud wouldn't be deposited, I would welcome this application. It's only because of the mud that I've recommended refusal. The reason that the weighting restrictions are experimental for 6 months is to see what effect putting them in will have on the area, and we fully expected parking to be displaced to Ravenstone's Drive. But then we've got to assess what impact that will have in the longer term. If the car park's provided, that might lessen the impact, and we may not even have to put the weighting restrictions in long term.
Yeah. Last time, when it was refused, I think the planning officers were very clear that a car park following a court case is now an intrusion into the green belt. Could that be confirmed? And secondly, my local comment on Ward Lane is that as you come over the bridge just by the entrance to Grandpa Greens, it's lethal if the road is icy or wet or any mud. Because if someone's coming out of what might be a car park there and somebody comes over that bridge at speed, you will have a hell of a ding, because literally your view is down to a few yards before you come over that bridge. You cannot see somebody coming out of that entrance. So if they're putting mud on that road and you're trying to brake, it really is going to be a terrible mixture. So I think that is actually making it more dangerous by putting cars into that sort of surface. But I do think the big thing for me is it was refused last time on Greenbelt, and I think this time, subject to confirmation, the Greenbelt legislation applies.
Thank you. Any more comments? Yeah, Hannah, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, just to clarify, really, and on the impact on the Greenbelt. It's sort of discussed the impact on the Greenbelt in the committee report, and yeah, I still maintain that it would amount to sort of encroachment onto the Greenbelt, and it would have a visual impact that hasn't been overcome by the way of very special circumstances. I don't think the provision of a car park in this instance for people buying ice cream amounts to a very special circumstance that would outweigh the harm of this intrusion onto the Greenbelt.
Is it me next, Chair? Thank you, Chair. I can take on board what Councillor McCann's saying regarding the sight line. I've been up to the site. Is it a problem? You know, do you see a problem from Highways' perspective about the site?
I've taken the view on this one that it's an existing access that's been used for a number of years by fewer vehicles. Also, the reduction in parked vehicles on Ward Lane, which would result from the provision of the car park, would help the situation in general as well. It's, again, I say, the only reason I've recommended refusal in this instance is the surfacing, and I would be horrified if it was that surfacing that was provided.
Thank you, Wendy. So, on those grounds, can I propose approval with a condition that the applicant install a suitable hard surface with the consultation of planning officers, please, Chair?
It's your privilege, Councillor Kirkham.
I'll second that.
Okay, before we move on, can I just ask Councillor Hudson? He's had his hand up for a while.
Yeah, I want to say that it's a pity the Greenbelt issue didn't come up when we debated it, because I didn't support this, but we are where we are, and we gave permission for this in the Greenbelt. So, well, it got through anyway. I didn't vote for it, and I just have to say, I do think this chap is trying now to sort out a problem. And I think it's wrong of us not to try and go somewhere along with him to sort out that problem. Now, I admit that Mark said, I've known it for 60 or 70 years. I represented it 60 years ago, Diddle, and I've never seen it like that. So I don't know when that picture was took. But I think you can't please everybody. The locals are grumbling about the traffic, and I think this chap is trying to say, I'll do something about the traffic. So I think we've got to at least chew it over and look into it, whether that will improve it or not. I never voted for this business, but I can quite see, now it's successful and operational, that he's trying to do something about the problem it's created. And it's definitely created a problem with traffic. And if I lived round there, I would be upset about it. So I think before we dismiss it out of hand, I think we've got to say, is this the best of two evils? For me, I've got to say, well, at least he's going some way to improve the situation. And as a person that's there more often than not in that area, I've got to say there is a problem. And I don't know when the traffic people went to look at it or when they saw that field like that, but I can't remember.
Through your chair, I think a lot of the debate has obviously focused around the traffic issues associated with this proposal. As members are aware, there are 3 reasons for refusal that have been posited before you for this decision. The first of those relates to the green belt, and to some extent that is the most fundamental issue that members need to consider in this issue. The first element is whether the proposal itself is deemed to be appropriate development in the green belt, and there are various categories of development set out in national guidance to explain what those elements are. The car park, the provision of a car park, does not meet that test, so by that provision it is inappropriate development, which is defined as being harmful in itself to the green belt. So in terms of the first reason, it is inappropriate, and therefore if members were wishing to support the application, it would be necessary to demonstrate there are very special circumstances which would outweigh that harm in principle. And members obviously have drawn, a couple of members have drawn issues about traffic problems in the area, and the test for members to consider is whether the relief of those is sufficient in itself to outweigh the harm to the green belt. And in terms of what I've heard of the debate and what I'm aware of the site and the comments that have been made, although it would assist, you've also heard about, for the weather in this country, what happens most of the year round is that it wouldn't actually assist at all in terms of relieving traffic problems in the local area. So again, you'd have to take that into consideration, but the test of approving development in the green belt, which is inappropriate, is a strong one, and certainly my advice to committee is that if even on that particular issue it is not sufficient in weight to outweigh that particular harm. So I'd like to sort of draw you back to that first issue. If you feel satisfied that it overcomes the green belt harm, then the other considerations on there I think follow on from that. But really you need to look at the traffic alleviation problems in the context of green belt policy as a first instance. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Nikki?
Can I just come back with one thing, please, Chair? As for addressing the green belt, I can see where you're coming from. It is green belt, but they're addressing it from the last application, what we had in. They've addressed everything, what you've brought up, including the green belt, especially the green belt, with the landscaping, what they're willing to, introduce. As for inappropriate development, we're not building a factory. We're not building a housing estate. It's a car park, which is going to really solve a problem up there. If you go up there any weekend, it's absolutely packed on Ward Lane. It's ridiculous, and a lot of people do park there because the children get to feed the ducks, then they get to go and have an ice cream, and they walk along the canal into Upper Mill. We're a cooperative council and we're supposed to be supporting small businesses, and that's the angle I'm coming at. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks. Chris?
Yeah. If this car park's granted permission, does the land then become previously developed land and therefore lose its protected status?
Well, in terms of the way the application would be considered, members could control any aspects of that in any case by imposing temporary permissions on the land. It would take a long period of time for that to become established, so simply the fact that it's got a permission for this type of use and then was used for it would not automatically mean that this becomes previously developed land in terms of any assessments of any other development proposals on the site. So no, I think in practical terms, no, it wouldn't.
Right, we've got a conflict there, because your colleague's nodding agreement and you're saying no. So, Steve, what's the answer? You can arbitrate.
Well, I'm not sure I'm at our Yeah, I mean, I think this is a classic balancing act for the members. I mean, I think Graham's advice was the advice that I would follow on this. He's absolutely right that you have to consider whether the development is inappropriate development. It clearly is. It clearly has an impact on openness. It clearly has a visual impact. And ultimately you have to make a decision whether there are very special circumstances that remove the harm created by the inappropriate development. That is a very stiff test. It is deliberately designed to be a stiff test, and as a consequence you as members must give significant weight to that. The only way you are going to get out of that if you think there are very special circumstances, and it really depends on the amount of weight that members consider that solving the traffic issues and whether that outweighs the considerable harm. You can see that officers don't think that. I don't think that. I think I said that last time. I absolutely appreciate the business case for why the person may want the car park, and I think Councillor Kirkham has made it very clear that she feels that it deals with the local parking issues. But whether that outweighs the loss of Greenbelt, in my opinion, it doesn't. But I think it's for you to weigh that up, and that's really all I can do. I can really only reiterate what Graham said earlier.
Okay, so Nikki, you've proposed approval with the condition of an appropriate hard surface. Yeah. Oh, well. Do I have a seconder for that? Okay. So we'll take this one first. Forgive me, Alan, I'm not firing all the minutes tonight. So we'll take that one first, won't we? We'll take. Okay, so we'll take Nikki's proposal first, which is approval with a condition that the car park could only be used if an appropriate hard surface is put down, to be agreed in consultation with the planning officers. Okay. Who's in favour of that?
Yeah, one point before you take this vote. See the conditions of environment
Oh, sorry, say again, Chris. What?
Well, you look at page 56. Environment have no objection, but they want conditions in relation to drainage, I think. If you have a concept.
I can't
no
see it.
No objection subject to the inclusion of conditions addressing surface water drainage, impact on heritage assets, and the impact on structural integrity, the canal corridor, litter and waste management.
So, Chair, are we clear that what we've got in mind is the kind of grasscrete? We shouldn't use that because it's a trade name. Is that the sort of solution that you're talking about? Because obviously members have previously refused an application for a less permeable surface on the site.
Whatever it may be, it's with consultation with the planning officer. You know what you would like them to use.
Yeah, grasscrete or some sort of plastic meshing that you can put down that grass can go through. So it's not hard standing, but it won't create a mud mire like that.
Just to avoid the mud.
Right, okay. So that's what we voted on. I don't think there's any chance of drainage going in on something like this at all. Because it uses the natural drainage if you use the grasscrete. Okay, so let's be clear then. Nikki has proposed approval with a grasscrete. There are other brands are available or a similar surface. All those in favour of that?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
7, yeah, okay. Against?
1, 2, 3. So it's 3 and 3.
Yeah, no, it's 1, 4.
1, 2, 3,
4.
4.
Okay.
Abstentions.
So there is
So are there any abstentions? No. Okay. So that is.
counted 7.
No.
Can we, sorry, Chair, I've counted 7, 4.
Definitely. Okay. I apologise. We're going to have to do it again. All those in favour?
Right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
8 in Miss Kramer.
Right.
Those against? And that is 1, 2, 3, 4.
4, right.
Okay, so the application is approved with that condition. I'm sure you'll speak to the officers about that, Nikki, and the applicant will as well. Okay, that's all the speakers. So if we move on to item 9 on page 43, it's just. Sorry? I'm okay now. It's just some minor amendments to an already approved application.
Can I move approval?
You certainly can. Okay, so it's been moved by Councillor Hudson, seconded by Councillor Kirkham, I think. All those, yeah.
There will need to be a new Section 106 agreement. There was a mistake in the report, so it's just you're approving it subject to a Section 106 agreement.
All those in favour? That's unanimous. Okay, the final item this evening, item 10, pages 49 to 54. Is this yours? It is, good.
Thank you, Chair. This is PA 341-189/17. Change of use from office to 10-bed HMO and main elevation changes at 28 Cluddock Road, Oldham. The site is an existing detached 2-storey building previously utilised as an office and located close to the junction with Lees Road. Neighbouring properties include a medical centre, an industrial area to the rear, which is currently used as a skip storage site. These are images of the site showing the building and the industrial use to the rear. These are the proposed changes to the layout internally to provide single bedrooms and a kitchen area at ground floor, and replicated on the upper floors. These elevational changes show the addition of roof lights to the front elevation, an addition of a window in the side elevation. It's considered that the use of the site as an HMO would be an acceptable use in a residential area. It wouldn't place an undue burden on surrounding land uses, and taking into account the sustainable location, there are no concerns in respect of highway safety, and that plan of permission is approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any comments? Councillor Hudson.
Could I ask the officer, are these sizes any different to the ones we refused at Royton or deferred? Because if not, we should treat it exactly the same.
Yeah. To our knowledge and looking at the plans and stuff, it does meet the guidelines in terms of HMOs, space standards.
Okay, any more comments? I think it's a little unfair that, Councillor Hudson, because it wasn't just the size of the rooms that I asked it be deferred. There were a number of other issues around the effects on the neighbouring properties. This one, those bedrooms look to me, off that drawing, to be quite a lot bigger than the ones in Royton. But that's just looking at what we're not here to debate that. The other issue is this is not near any other residential accommodation. We are, indeed.
And I've asked the size.
Yes, you have. Okay, any other comments? I do. Please work with me tonight. Javid.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was just going to say that this HMO isn't close to any residential properties, and I can't see any issues. As the report says, the rooms, the capacity is bigger. I just say approve it. Thank you.
Okay, moved and seconded. John.
Just a question, Chair. It says there are car parking space. Is that one car parking space or several? Because parking is certainly a major problem in that area.
Yeah, I mean, there is space to be used at the front if somebody wants to park a car.
Give us an idea how many. 127, 200, just one?
Just one.
Oh, good one.
Do we know what the surrounding streets are? Are they double yellows or? Yeah.
Yeah, as you can see from the picture there, there's double yellows on the obviously the entrance of the junction, but also on the opposite side because you're queuing up towards the junction with Lees Road.
There is, Councillor McCann, some parking on the other side of the street. I think there's a health centre, isn't there, around there? So there is some on-street parking there, and there's some a little bit further down the side there. So there is some, but not directly. The issue, of course, with the car parking there is, of course, that's quite a busy junction. So you probably wouldn't want loads of people parking in that because, to be frank, lots of cars coming and going might block the traffic in any case.
Okay, any more comments? It's recommended for refusal. I've had a mover and a seconder. Did I say refusal? I really must go and lie down. Thanks for putting me right. Okay, yes, so it is recommended for approval. We've had a mover and a seconder. All those in favour?
Thanks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Against? Abstentions? Okay, the application is approved. And that is it for this evening. I don't think my nerves could stand any worse. Please note the appeals, and we have lost a couple, but we're still holding our own. And it does appear, doesn't it, that it's the highways issues that we're falling down on. So, thanks again.